But in those 3 tours in Vietnam, he had, well, several times he was wounded, but the last tour he was critically wounded, and he's going to share more about that. But because of his, and of course, Roger, thank you for your sacrifice and your service to our country, and especially to our Lord. But he was critically injured. He's going to tell that story. But out of that, he won numerous medals. I think it's 3 Purple Hearts, 1 Bronze Star, and a number of other different awards. He's also won and commendations, and for all of what he did in service to our country. So we thank you for that. But then, just to let you know, from a ministry side, after he came to the Lord, then the Lord led him into the ministry with, as we know, David Wilkerson's Teen Challenge. And he helped to establish teen challenges in Iowa and Nebraska. And then he went on to Tennessee, where he actually served in a teen challenge there for many years and greatly increased the capacity there, without any indebtedness to it, as both for men's and women's facilities. And so he served in Teen Challenge, I think, for close to 40 years, I believe. Right. And then from there, from his experience, he's gone on to establish Roger Helle Ministries, and they minister and they help other nonprofits, and they consult them and so forth in many different ways, but especially in the areas of funding and so forth. So continuing to minister in that capacity, taking all that great experience and sharing it with people like somebody cares Tampa Bay. And so when he's down here, I'm going to be really picking his brain. But Roger, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much. I didn't want to give them I didn't want to get into the weeds, because I'm sure you can tell your story a whole lot better than me reading it off your bio here. So if you don't mind, tell us, of course, grew up, your brother Ron from Toledo, Ohio, and then early on in your 20s, I think you went on and enlisted and went into the, into the Army. Am I correct?
Nope.
Marine Corps.
So there you are. Being a Christian, that was one of the things I had to realize. As Marines, the few, the proud, the Marines. But when I got saved, it was no problem from stepping down from the United States Marine Corps to become one of God's soldiers in God's army. So what a joy to be with you tonight. And my wife and I are both looking forward to being with you men in Tampa Bay. As Dan shared, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My parents were alcoholics. My dad left my family when I was 4. My mom left us shortly after that. We spent some time in a state orphanage and were adopted. We went to live with our grandparents, but my mom came back, remarried, and we grew up in a blended family, his kids, her kids, our kids. And, my mom was still an alcoholic. My stepdad was a workaholic, worked 2 jobs to support this blended family. And, growing up, even though I'm an identical twin, and we used to joke about that, we used to, fool people all the time. But there was something about me that my mother, it reminded her of my real dad. And she used to look at me. I was about 6, 7 years old. First time, my stepdad would go to work at night after he'd come home from his day job, have dinner, and go off work a night job. And that's when my mom would start drinking. Well, she would, one night, I was about 6.5, 7 years old, walked through the kitchen. She looked up at me and she said, "You know something, Roger? You're never going to amount to anything. You're going to be a bum just like your dad." And, I was like 6 or 7, and I thought, okay, she drinks a lot. She says stuff, she gets mad. She doesn't really mean that. I mean, who could not like me, love me? And, but, I heard that for 10 years until I graduated from high school. So right out of high school, we started, I was 17 when I graduated from high school. My brother and I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, finished basic training, infantry training, and I think I was a month and a half after my 18th birthday that my brother and I, both different units, we were on our way to Vietnam. And, growing up, I saw the World War II movies. I saw John Wayne in the Sands of Iwo Jima. I was at that age where we watched Vic Morrow on Combat every Tuesday night. And so I thought I knew what combat was all about. And as a Marine, I felt like we were very well trained. Vietnam was different than World War II, World War I. It was guerrilla warfare. And there's a strategy in guerrilla warfare where the enemy waits until it's to his advantage to let you find him. And when I got to Vietnam, we had some patrols, some operations, sniper fire, a few booby traps. But our first big battle that I was involved in, my company of 219 Marines was ambushed by a battalion of Viet Cong regulars. There was three forces that we fought in Vietnam. You had the farmer by day, guerrilla by night. You had the main core, hardcore Viet Cong forces. Those are forces that organized in the South and operate out of base camps in the jungle. Then you had the North Vietnamese troops that were infiltrated down into South Vietnam. And so we ran into we were ambushed by a 650 battalion Viet Cong regulars. And in one 45-minute firefight, my company of 219 Marines was reduced to 78 men that had not been killed or wounded. My best friend, Danny, that I'd gone through all my training with, was killed standing right next to me. My platoon sergeant, Korean veteran who had taken us as new guys under his wing, was killed on the other side of me. And it was just, I had never seen anybody die before. I had never seen anybody die as violently as what I saw on that day. And it changed my life. And the thing about Vietnam, or when you're in a combat situation, when you have friends, when you have family members, people you love, you lose somebody that you love, there's a process that we have to go through to be healthy. It's called the grieving process. In Vietnam, and I'm sure Iraq, Afghanistan, when you're continually in a combat situation, you were not allowed to grieve, because if you got emotional, you could get yourself or somebody else killed. So you took that grief and you just stuffed it down inside. And not just the grief, but there were other emotions too: anger, fear, hate, all those emotions that you just took and from being in a situation like we were in Vietnam, you just stuffed it down inside. I did 2 tours back to back. I was wounded twice. Half my time was in an infantry company. Half my time was living in the villages with the people. And while I was living in the villages with the people, God really gave me I love the people of Vietnam. And I felt sorry for the situations that they were in. If the communists, found out they cooperated with us, they would kill them. We would not kill them, but they would. And so there was that constant fear. Village chiefs killed because they would cooperate with the Americans. But I felt sorry, the poverty, the sicknesses that they dealt with in Vietnam. Well, the thing about sympathy doesn't require you to do anything. And so after my second tour, which, I came home to a different country than when I had joined. America had changed from 1965 when I enlisted, when serving your country still was lauded. And I came back in 1967 to a country that was embarrassed by Vietnam, because we had a media that distorted what was happening nightly. We watched Vietnam in our living rooms nightly. And I came home, and my family, my mom said, "Raj, we're glad you're okay. We're glad you made it home. But this Vietnam," and we didn't use the term awkward then. So it was more, it's like, well, this is kind of embarrassing, this Vietnam. And so let's just do this. Let's just pretend like it didn't happen and not talk about it and just get on with our lives. Well, I'll tell you, man, I was glad that I was alive to be able to get on with my life. And I wanted to forget. But the only problem was that when I would go to sleep at night and when I'd close my eyes, I would be reliving Vietnam all over again. Now, I was fortunate because I was still in the Marine Corps. When I came back, I was a marksmanship instructor for a couple of months. I was a drill instructor for a year and a half. And then I re-enlisted to become a criminal investigation division investigator. Think Leroy Jeffro Gibbs with a better haircut. And so for the next 3 years I spent in America. By 1970, this country had changed dramatically. I mean, when I would put my uniform and go out somewhere and encounter a peace protester who wanted to kill me for peace, or somebody that I never met before calling me murderer or baby killer. And so, 1970, I volunteered to go back to Vietnam, was once again living in the villages. And I didn't realize right away, the one was obvious. I mean, by 1970, I didn't feel like I belonged here anymore. And that was one reason, because of the radical transformation of our country. They were not just embarrassed by Vietnam anymore. They were outright angry. And again, a small minority of people, but given huge visibility by the media. The other reason was, and I didn't understand this because of some situations that they'll talk in more detail about in June, is that something called survivor's guilt. Now, this is not just something that combat veterans experience. People who survive a tragedy, like a car accident where everybody in the car is killed but you, or in 9/11, all your friends in the office next door died when the towers came down and you got out alive. It's called survivor's guilt. And I did not realize it, that I had felt guilty because I was still alive when men better than me had not come home at all. So went back to Vietnam, was a platoon leader. While I was a sergeant, I was operating in the billet of a lieutenant. And long story short, June 1970, leading my platoon on a search and destroy mission. I had a grenade go off at my feet. I stood up, got up, was shot twice. And as I was laying on the ground, I was bayoneted by a North Vietnamese soldier. And this was like a nightmare. My mind was reeling from what was going on. It just happened so quickly. And my Navy corpsman and a young Marine Lance Corporal ran out across an open field, dragged me to safety, put me on a helicopter. I was taken to a field hospital at China Beach, Da Nang, Army Field Hospital. And 6 days later, I woke up in intensive care, and I saw my twin brother, walk by my bed. And I heard the doctor tell my brother that I was going to die. He didn't even recognize me when he walked by my bed. And guys, I was 22. I was 3 months from my 23rd birthday, and my third time being wounded. And I didn't want to die. And there was more fear at that moment than 3 tours of combat. And I remember closing my eyes, and I remember praying in my heart, God, if there really is a God, if you let me live, I'll do anything you want. And I closed my eyes and went back to sleep. The doctor told my brother a week and a half later that I was going to live. I had turned the corner. They waited another week before it was safe to fly me out of the country. But on the way home, I started bleeding internally. So they took me off the plane in Japan, and I was about 4 weeks and 5 more surgeries in Japan. And then finally to the hospital closest to my home up at Great Lakes Naval Hospital, Chicago. I spent the next 9 months, 27 operations, 4 plastic surgery operations. They were going to amputate my leg, but they didn't. They were going to amputate my right arm, but they didn't. They told me I was going to go blind, but I didn't. And all these things began to happen. And at the end of 9 months, I was medically discharged from the Marine Corps. And I thought, like the Marine Corps, when the going gets tough, the Marines get going. Hoorah. But, on the outside, I looked okay. I went to work for nation's largest private investigation security company, Pinkerton's. I was working my way up into management. Outwardly, my life looked successful. I met my wife, convinced her I was normal, and which I wasn't, and got married. And 2 years later, my life was falling apart because while I had left Vietnam, Vietnam had never left me. And my wife and I were separated, going to get a divorce when Jesus Christ came into our life. And I'll go more into detail, but I went to my wife's apartment where she had moved out. We knelt by the bed, and I cried out from a broken heart and said, God, if you can use anybody like me, here I am. And at that moment, the dead weight of guilt and shame and pain that I carried for 4.5 years dropped to my feet, and the nightmares that night stopped forever. And God radically transformed my life. He did things. He healed my body with things that I was struggling with, and my investigative career was taking off. And then all of a sudden, I had a come to Jesus moment where God called my wife and I to leave Pinkerton's and to start teen challenge centers in Nebraska and Iowa. And I want to tell you, those 16 years, the 24 years of Teen Challenge down in here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, 40 years of serving the Lord through Teen Challenge were the most exciting years of our life. Ministry's hard, but the joy of seeing so many lives transform. And, when God called me into the ministry, I go, I shoot people, I blow things up, Lord, I don't know anything about this. And he said, son, that way you won't have to take the credit when I do it. And for 40 some years that I've been in ministry, that's worked pretty well. That God is faithful, that if we respond to his calling, if we listen to that still small voice of the Holy Spirit, he will guide us. What excites me about coming to be with you in June is I believe, men, we are in a critical time in our country. I'm 74. I believe we're at the most critical time in our culture, in our nation. And, the Marines had a slogan since the Marines were founded in 1776, the Marines are looking for a few good men. And in the original enlistment way back, that was based on the person of Gideon, where the angel of the Lord, Gideon's hiding from the Midianites, and the angel of the Lord says, "Oh, thou mighty man of valor." Guys, we need men of valor. Soldier up. We need men who are going to step up and be the fathers in the family, to be the head of the house, to be that spiritual influence. We in our culture, we have too many Christians that are thermometers. There's a difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer reflects the temperature around it. A thermostat sets it. God is raising up men of valor, men of courage, who will dare to be a thermostat, a spiritual thermostat in their home, in their church, in their community. And I'm excited to share some principles with you, men, that I have learned over the years. As Dan said earlier, it's like, here's some things I've learned over 40 years of ministry. I think these will help. Here's some things, don't do them, already did not go well. But if there's one thing I've learned about that I want to share with you, some biblical principles on spiritual warfare, how we can turn this country around if we'll just soldier up. I'm looking forward to being with you guys in June. God bless you, and you have a great week. Dan?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Roger. Hey, guys, you know what? I don't know. I think the guy knows something about warfare. And so I don't know about you, but I want to know what he's going to say June 11th, right? And let me also share with you, when he said that he had a love for the Vietnamese people, and I remember this, is that he's taken a number of groups over to Vietnam since then to minister to the underground church, to minister to the since 1989, started Vets with a Mission, where they continue to go over and to serve the Vietnam people and the churches in that country as well. And also, guys, if you want to get his book, A Time to Kill, A Time to Heal, is his latest book. And I think it was, so you can go get that book now. I think it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all those various places where you can go get it.